What the Pel is up, everybody? This is Pelicans Plus with Elliot Clough at Elliot Clough on Twitter. Of course, we are brought to you by Hornitos. Hornitos, the official tequila of Boot Crew Media and Pelicans Plus. Subscribe or follow depending on where you're listening to this podcast. Before we get started, and leave that rate and review on Apple Podcasts if you're over there. And of course, tell a friend about the pod. And as you can see on the screen there, this podcast is brought to you by DraftKings as well. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PLUS, that's PLUS. Bet just $5 on any NBA team to win their game and win $200 in free bets. If they win, you win with promo code PLUS, PLUS, this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an authorized sports betting partner of the NBA. And if you're in Louisiana, you can still download the app and play for prizes. Must be 21 or older in New Jersey, Indiana, Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling a problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And after the longest intro of all time, you can see that I am joined by Kevin Barrios here on Pelicans Plus today. Kevin, hailing from the Bird Rights. How you doing, man?
Doing okay. I got my booster shot yesterday, so I was kind of out of it for a little while this morning, but after a nice nap and some pho, I'm back to normal. So
glad to hear it, man. Glad to hear it. Gotta get that booster. And did you have any adverse reactions, like any more this time, or anything different from this last time that you got it? Your second shot, I'm assuming.
This is my third. The booster is the third for me because I'm Moderna. But yeah, it was worse than like the first shot. I didn't really have any issues except for a slight pain in my arm. But the second one, I had a little bit of issue, but it was only like for 2 hours. But this one kind of wiped me out. Like yesterday wasn't too bad. It was when I got it. My arm hurt a little bit, but at night I just started to get the chills and really bad body aches. And I had that all through the day, was just kind of drained all day. But now I think I'm through it. So
glad to hear you're through it. And, you come for the Pelicans takes, you stay for Kevin health updates. So
yeah, talk about my sinuses, my IBS.
We'll get that at the end of the episode. How's that? So like I said, Kevin joining us today to talk a little bit about how the Pels are doing. Unfortunately, we're not really changing our tune much based on what you've been listening to, but we'll get a little bit different of a perspective here today. And, I tweeted out, I think it was yesterday, that it's tough to watch the Pelicans right now. And it's even tougher for people who are in the market. I've got League Pass, so it's not really all that difficult for me. But today I asked fans on Twitter if they're still watching the Pelicans, and the resounding answer was like an unfortunately yes. And Kevin, my question for you here is, if you weren't covering the team, would you be watching the product that we're getting right now?
Yeah, I love basketball, so I try to watch it whenever I can. And then, they're the home team, so they're the team that I root for. Ever since they washed up on my shores with Baron Davis, they became my team. So they'd be the team that I watch. But I have to say, I feel like even like the Gravis Vasquez led years where he was our point guard were more fun than this year has been. It's been a really trying year because when you can't score, it really takes the fun out of basketball. There's only so many times you can get hyped on a Herbert Jones great defensive play and really be excited about that, and for that to bring joy to you. Scoring is what sells tickets, as they've always said, and we just cannot score the basketball. So it's very tough to watch. And then you combine that with this whole Bally Sports nightmare that we have going on here. It makes it really – it's like I jump through so many hoops and deal with so much technical difficulties to watch such a bad product. It's super frustrating, I don't know what the answer is there, but it's all the streaming apps that I have that I use to watch anything else, I never have any trouble, but the Bally Sports app just crashes and burns constantly and lags. So it makes it even more difficult of an experience. Luckily, I used to have season tickets. I gave them up the year of the pandemic, and I have been offered pretty much tickets to every home game so far. So I've gone to a lot of them. So in the home games, I don't have to really worry about it. But trying to watch an away game is pretty tough.
Sure. And, the thing about the product that we're getting right now, on top of the fact that, I mean, people have hard lives. Like, people have stuff to worry about with their family and their job. And now they can't even watch their team, then their bad team on top of that. Like, I don't know. I'm sure there's hundreds of people that have opened the app, it crashes, and they're just like, F it, I'm going to do something else. So not only is it a bad product, but people can't watch the bad product.
Right. Yeah, they make it difficult to watch something that nobody really wants to watch anyway. So it's just, it's tough.
It's a big conglomeration of so many different reasons for people to say screw it. And it sucks. It sucks on so many different levels, especially when we had so much hype going into the season. Prior to the Zion news, were you excited about this year? What were your expectations?
I thought we'd be about a 500 team. I felt like you bring it in a whole bunch of new guys. The West is already tough. I feel like every basketball team, outside of like the bottom 2 or 3 are pretty good basketball. I think there's really good basketball players in the league now, like across the board. So we have every night is a tough night for the most part. And I thought a brand new coach that's going to have to learn on the job with a bunch of pressure on him. You have COVID issues. People are going to miss games for that. You have to factor in health. We don't have, Zion hasn't been a picture of perfect health. We've never had much health luck, so you can't expect to have good health luck going into a season. So I thought we'd be about 500, maybe like if everything clicked right, 2 games over 500, 3 games over 500, but more expectedly about 500 than when we found out about Zion's injury, before we knew it was going to be this long delay in return. I expected the long delay in return. I was like, there's no way he's going to be back opening night. A lot of people gave me shit over that, but whatever. It doesn't matter. I just knew, like, from history and from a broken foot and for a guy with that weight, not to expect him back. I figured he'd miss at least 20 games, and looks like we're right on pace for that. Probably he's going to miss more than that, because I mean, they're doing another round of tests on Wednesday, and Wednesday would be the 20th game, correct? Yeah, the 20th game. So he's not going to be back for that, and may miss a few more weeks. Who knows? We'll see. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation. I think, any hope of the postseason is out the window at this point, because you can't even expect health the rest of the way. Other people are going to miss time. Zion still might miss more games after coming back. He's probably not going to play back-to-backs for a little bit. It's been adjusting to all new roles again, because everybody, is Jonas Valanciunas going to get the touches that he gets now, or Brandon Ingram going to get the touches that he gets now? Everything's going to look different.
Is BI even going to be healthy?
Right. And that's the other thing is, like, if he's been so bad since he's come back, like, if it is his hip that's bothering him, why are we even playing him? Just let him get healthy and let him get right, so that when Zion comes back, then you can maybe try to make a run if possible. But I still think, the season's a wash now.
Right. I mean, what the Suns are doing right now, going on whatever it was, 13-game win streak, that's like in effect what the Pelicans have to do in order to be anywhere near relevance.
Yeah, and we haven't won like more than 4 games in a row in forever, like years. So,
Yeah. And their wins this season have been over garbage teams. And the Pelicans are a garbage team themselves. So it's difficult. It's difficult to watch this team, and that's just the way it is. And we've talked about a little bit about Jaxson Hayes and NAW when I've had you on before. Obviously, they're a big part of what the Pelicans, we were hoping that they would be a big part of what the Pelicans do. Jaxson Hayes is averaging career lows in, I think, minutes, points per game, and some other statistics that I saw today, like 4 major statistics.
Yeah,
I'd have to look
percentage,
it up.
I believe, rebounds and percentage. And I mean, he was already a terrible rebounder. So for him to average.
Yeah, and I know you were fairly low on Jaxson, at least for his rookie year. We saw him bounce back last year, and he looked really good. I mean, from what I was told by fans who were at the game, he was laughing on the bench last night, and he was the only player that was available that got a coach's decision, did not play.
Not even garbage time. So
what the hell, man? Do you have any? Do you feel any gratification that you're like, I'm right or I was right?
No. I always want to be proven wrong when I'm down on somebody because I want us to be a good team. Like I'm not like in this for ego or whatever, you know. I didn't love the pick at all when they picked him. I didn't hate it because I felt like after you looked at the draft, you know, you had the consensus number 1 in Zion, obviously. I would have picked somebody different at 8, or I would have just kept 4 and picked somebody there. But you know, getting that project high ceiling guy at 8, and then in theory getting Nikhil at 17, who was seemingly more ready to contribute right away. I thought that was an okay strategy. I mean, I wasn't high on Jaxson Hayes, the player, but I understood the idea of like if his upside clicks, he could be a phenomenal player because he's an incredible athlete. I just don't think that and to be honest, like I don't watch college basketball. Like I just think it's a bad product. So I don't have that much time. So I can't watch pro and college really. I just start scouting, you know, through highlight reels and reading up on people. So I didn't know a whole lot about him personally, but you know, I just feel like he just doesn't approach the game with any maturity, or, you know, like we saw it briefly last year after his benching. He sort of got into gear and he started to approach the game more maturely, started to show up to practice early. You saw growth on the court. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm glad he's proven me wrong because I thought he was just a lost cause because you see him, he doesn't set screens at all, doesn't box out at all, doesn't understand defense at all. His energy is just chaotic. It doesn't help. A lot of people cite his energy as something that they really like, but I look at it and it's just like a kid hopped up on sugar, you know, like, you know, a kid in the stands eating cotton candy and drinking Cokes and all of that throughout the game, just running around like a maniac, falling all over the floor, but not really doing anything that actually contributes to winning or helping out. So that's the most frustrating thing. I mean, he still doesn't have an offensive move 3 years in, not a single offensive move. I mean, he can catch a lob, but even that hasn't really been working out for him. I guess partially because we don't have anyone that can throw a lob seemingly at this point. But yeah, like I think if he's ever a real rotational NBA player, it's going to be about 4 or 5 more years down the line. You know, I mean, and to his defense, he only played like 2 years of basketball before coming into the NBA, so he's way behind the curve of anybody else that's coming into the league. But it's more of his mindset. So he needs to somehow have that realization that if I want to do this, if I want to be in the NBA, I have to change the way I approach the game and dedicate myself in the right way. And look, maybe, you know, whatever. I don't judge people for, like, maybe he doesn't really like basketball. Maybe he doesn't really like, you know, he's just tall and athletic. So he got thrown into that. That's a way to make some money. And he doesn't care about his job. I mean, that's fine, but you're going to be out of the league soon, you know, and, you know, in sports, it's kind of like when everybody's depending on you and other people's jobs depend on you succeeding, you know, general managers, coaches, things like that. It's a little bit harder to excuse than just, a person who's working at a fast food restaurant or whatever, not really giving a shit because it's just a paycheck. But I feel like that's where we are with him. And until he comes around, and maybe he will eventually if he gets in the right system, if he matures enough, maybe has a family he has to support or whatever it is, that can turn him around to be a more serious person. Because he has the physical skills and gifts. He may last in the league, but if not, I think he's probably out of the league in 4 or 5 years from now if he doesn't turn things around, because that athleticism isn't going to stick around. And then if you're not contributing anything, if you don't have a single go-to move offensively, if you're not boxing out, if you're not setting screens, then what good are you? So,
yeah. And I mean, on top of the things that he's not doing, what he is doing is falling back on a lot of really bad habits this year. And on top of that, we were told this offseason by Griff, by a few people with some sources, that Jaxson was phenomenal in Nashville. And I heard other things. I don't know if you had heard anything, but and it's just another expectation, another thing that we were lied to about. And so it just adds to the frustration. How are you feeling about Nickeil? I mean, we were all, MIP season is what we were hoping for Nickeil, and he's averaging a career high in, I think, shooting attempts and minutes, but a career low percentage in field goal percentage and 3-point percentage. So is he just being relied on too much? That's where I would probably go.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Nickeil, honestly, I'm biased towards Nickeil because, as a person that follows a team, you're always thinking of guys that you want your team to get, whether that's through trade, free agency, or the draft. And I really wanted us to get Nickeil Alexander-Walker when we made that trade to get that extra pick. And he fell to us. It was the first time the team had ever really drafted the guy that I wanted outside of, the obvious choices of Chris Paul, Anthony Davis, and Zion Williamson. So I had a lot of emotional investment in him. And the thing with Nickeil is it's different than the Jackson Hayes situation, because Nickeil takes the game seriously and he approaches it seriously, and you see actual basketball skills. There's a basketball player there.
Yep.
Consistency has been a huge problem, and I feel like he puts too much on himself, and and fair enough to some degree, because a lot of times there's nobody out there with him. I mean, he feels like he has to do too much at this point. So I'm trying not to judge him too harshly. Obviously, he has regressed in decision making, passing wise, and his shot has been a nightmare so far this season. But when he continually attacks the basket, good things happen. And if he can just get into a role where that's all he has to do, where you have some other competent players around him, and all he has to do is drive to the basket or cut to the basket if he's off the ball, then I think you'll start to see a better Nickeil. I still think there's a good basketball player in there. Obviously, he has his limitations. He's not super athletic. He's not super fast, but he plays the passing lanes well. He fights over screens hard. He has a great handle. He can make incredible passes. Sometimes that becomes something he relies on too often, and he makes he has poor judgment, and sometimes on the passes that he risks. But at a lot of times, it's just what else can he do? Because I mean, he's got Garrett Temple out there with him. He's got just guys that aren't making shots, and I think his numbers would look better if other guys were making shots, because he is setting up some people nicely. Sometimes they're just not finishing. So I think hopefully once Ingram is healthy, once Zion comes back, if Trey finds his shot, if we don't have to play Garrett Temple that much anymore, I think that you'll see a much improved Nickeil, where he doesn't feel like he has to take so much on and he fits more into his role. So I still have a lot of hope for him. I don't know that he's going to be the player that I thought he was going to be, but I think he's still going to be a serviceable, solid role player in this league for years.
where I was at with NAW last season was saying that he could be that tertiary playmaker behind Zion and BI. And I still see that. And I think, and a lot of that will come from him attacking the basket, the defense collapsing, finding open shooters, whatever. But also when Zion's back, whenever that happens, the defense is going to collapse a lot. And I think, I don't know the numbers. I don't have second spectrum or all that, whatever available, but I mean, he's going to get a lot more wide open threes, and it's not like he's made a bunch of those this year either. So I think it just provides an opportunity for him to get more of a flow, and he can really be, I think, sort of that. I don't want to necessarily say a microwave scorer because he's not going to be Lou Williams, but I think he's got a little bit of that in him, and his ability to finish is freaking awesome. Like, if we're being honest.
Yeah, he's like an ambidextrous Tyreke Evans kind of, like he can finish with both hands. Not a great defender, but when he tries hard, he's a solid defender. Not a great athlete, but he has strength, and he can get to the rim. Like, that's the thing. Tyreke Evans could get to the rim, no problem. NAW can get to the rim. They're a little bit different because Tyreke Evans would just use his strength and pound his way in. Whereas Nikhil's got like handles to create space and get to the bucket. But I think they're somewhat similar. And if they were playing that role, I think it's good. But like, I think right now, part of the problem too is like, it's basically like, even when Devontae's healthy, it's kind of like, even though Devontae's like point guard sized, he's still more of like a combo guard. And Nikhil is also kind of like a combo guard. And Satoransky is a shell of what he used to be. Kyra's
Kyra.
Kyra, like, I mean, he's been pretty solid the last few games, but before that, he looked pretty terrible. And we don't know what he is really. And he's not really getting the run that he maybe should get, because right now, what's the point in playing those vets? Why not try to grow the younger guys and get them the minutes at this point? But there's really, my basic point is there's no floor general on the team right now, and that hurts everyone, because you have guys that are trying to create that aren't prime creators, and then everything else that they're doing offensively isn't made easier because there's not a guy out there that can make their jobs easier and put them in better positions. So that's one of the biggest issues that we have right now.
Right. And on top of that, you mentioned getting guys in better position, finding guys to get buckets. I mean, you don't have a guy out there that has not only the veteran piece in their brain of experience, but the skill to have the trust of the team where it's like, okay, calm down. I can make a play for you. When there's that, gargantuan lead that the Pelicans have gotten and pissed down their legs several times this season, there's no, okay, we got this. And if it's coming from somebody, it's Garrett Temple, who is not particularly good anymore. I
would say it's really coming from Josh Hart. Josh Hart is the leader of this team right now. And I mean, he's settling people down the most out of anybody. He's that guy on the court. But again, what is Josh Hart? He's definitely not a point guard.
No.
He's kind of a tweener, shooting guard, small forward. But he's attacking the basket. He's hitting threes right now. He's been the most consistent player. And obviously we know he's a solid rebounder for his size. So he's the one that's out there. That's the heart of the team and the leader on the team. I mean, Garrett Temple is I don't understand how he's still getting minutes. I mean, Fish keeps posting those numbers of his plus minuses, and they're just insanely bad. And it's like, what's the point? We are bad. We're going to lose games. Why not let young players learn from mistakes instead of having a veteran who's making rookie mistakes when he's on the court? Right. He has some of the worst turnovers of anybody on the team, and the most costly turnovers. And he's the veteran that's supposed to be the one that's keeping everybody in line and being that mentor on the floor. And he's the one that's making some of the biggest mistakes out there. So what's the point of him even being on the court? I just don't get it. Just move him into that, coaching role on the bench, from the bench, and let these young guys play and grow. And look, I mean, I don't know how long you've been following this team. I know like you started covering the Pelicans, like 2 or 3 years ago now?
Yeah. Yep.
But, like we've had this history of like errors where towards the end of the season, we have no hope, we have injuries, and we have a bunch of 10-day contract guys playing. And that's some of the funnest basketball we got to see because those guys work hard, play hard, are fighting for something. So if we're going to be bad, let's be fun and like try to grow from it. That's my thing. Like I don't need to see Garrett Temple turning the ball over, hitting his first 3 of the night every time, and then that's it. Everything else is terrible. And Satoransky is just, I don't know what's going on with him. I mean, I always was a Satoransky fan. I thought he was a solid player. But even when we made the acquisition, I was like, this is kind of like old school Knicks acquisition of a guy. It's like, 4 years too late, and it's been worse than I thought,
Oh, that hurts. That really hurts, Kev.
Well, I mean, that's what it's like, it's like he was a guy that I used to like and I thought could be a guy that you could be. I mean, he was. I mean, when he was in Washington, he was a solid player. When John Wall was hurt, he was doing really well, and he was a great like reserve point guard. But, by the time he got to Chicago, I don't know what it was. I don't know if he's lost a step or what, but he's just not the same player that he was, and now he's even worse than that. So I don't know. I just don't see the point in playing those guys right now.
And I mean, when the Pels brought Temple and Sato on, the purpose of bringing them on was to be veteran guys who just don't make mistakes. They don't have to be a plus, but they can't be a negative, and they've been negatives. And,
Temple, I mean.
Sorry?
Especially Temple, he's just been a huge negative.
Yeah. And you can blame not having Zion. You can blame health. You can blame putting too much on their plate at this point in their career. But I mean, there's just no way around it, as they've both been bad. And you mentioned playing the young guys, getting them the run now and having them learn from mistakes as opposed to playing Temple and Sato. There's the terminology that some people like to use in the NBA called tanking. Are you pro tank? What are your thoughts right now?
My thoughts are we don't have to try to tank. We are just bad. So we're going to lose games. So why not make it the most productive version of losing games that you can while it's there, Right. I mean, if Ingram's healthy, play him. But if he's hurting and he's having trouble comfort-wise and it's affecting his game, let him get healthy before we worry about it, But I guess Griffin is trying to save his job somewhat. I mean, and then, of course, a player is going to want to play. A guy like Ingram loves basketball, so he's going to want to play if he feels like he's healthy enough to play. But it's clear something's clearly affecting him because he has been atrocious the last, since he's come back from the injury with aside from a little stretch against the Clippers. But even for the most part of that game, he was pretty bad. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't see the point in playing a guy if he's not physically able to do what he's supposed to be doing.
And you're bad.
Yeah, when you're bad. I mean, it's funny. Like when we did a roundtable on the Bird Rights about predicting the first 20 games, and I wanted to say that we would be 4-16, and then I was like, no, that's too negative. I bumped it up to 6-14, but I don't even know if we're going to get to that 4-16 mark. It's not looking good.
Yeah, it is not. And with where we're at in the season and playing the older guys, when a lot of people are calling to play the young guy. Trey Murphy got 4 minutes last night.
Yeah, I mean, he had 1 minute when the game counted. He got in It was insane. I don't understand. I don't understand what Willie was doing there.
Willie has a lot to learn, and I will give him the benefit of the doubt in just about every way. Like this because I'm a huge Willie guy, and this team has been screwed in a lot of ways this season. But it was just weird. Like why play these guys who are actively bad and not give your first round pick? It was just it's weird. And Trey hasn't gotten in a groove at all yet this season. He was awesome in the preseason, awesome in summer league. Why don't you give him run and just let him shoot to where he can get comfortable? Obviously, you're not going to run every possession for him, but I mean, like I just don't get it. And again, I'm not dissing Willie. I saw a comment on one of my YouTube videos this week that said we shouldn't have gotten rid of SVG. Fucking what? Fucking what?
I mean, we shouldn't have kept Gentry is really the main thing. That set us back so far. If you would have hired not necessarily Willie Green, because I don't know if he was ready that Zion's rookie year to come in as a head coach, but that was the time to hire a coach like Willie Green. Now you're in year 3 of Zion. You have Zion and BI are all-stars. The expectations are high. You have so much pressure on this guy who has never coached before with a roster that's completely turned over. And then now you throw in the wrinkle of you're going to be missing Zion for, 20, 25, 30 games. Brandon Ingram, the president of basketball operations has a fire under his seat. It was just a terrible situation to put him in. I think he's probably going to be a good coach. I like Willie Green a lot as a person, and I liked him as a player. When he was here, he had a game here that was one of my favorite New Orleans basketball games to go to, where he just went insane, hit I think it was 13 straight shots against the Phoenix Suns. It was a really fun game. He had this huge putback in this other game. There's some really memorable experiences of Willie Green, even in his short experience as a player in New Orleans. And being a role player at that. But so I want him to succeed, but I just feel like the cards are stacked against him. And I feel like it's more of a matter of when than if that Griffin gets fired. And if they don't promote or just eliminate that position completely, or they don't promote Trajan to that position, then, you have to worry about Willie Green's job, because most GMs don't want to come in and have to have a coach that they didn't bring in, and then that would be a 4th coach in 4 years. And I just feel like at that point, the writing's on the wall that you just have to trade Zion Williamson. I mean, that's where you would be at that. The situation is so dysfunctional and has been set back so long that you just have to move on. And that's a tough thing to say. It's just the whole situation was mismanaged from the beginning, from the coaching situation to the relationship with Zion Williamson from the start with David Griffin, that I don't, it's hard for me right now to see a path out of trading him at some point in the very near future. And I hate saying that, but it's just how it feels at the moment. And I hope that that's something that I'm wrong about, but we'll see. I mean, I feel like this is going to be another wasted season. So that's 3 years of not making the playoffs, probably turmoil at the top, turnover at the top, maybe another coaching change. And it's just, you can't expect a player with that much marketability to be satisfied in that situation, especially when he has a contract coming up. So, we'll see. I hope we can figure it out. But if not, hopefully you get somebody in here who can manage the assets better than David Griffin has.
When I think it was either last week or a couple weeks ago, Chris had a Spaces where you joined and just went off on Griff, and it was like it wasn't even a Sunday, but you were preaching out there, man. And I really the fan base is fed up. Like there's how does he make it through the season? I don't see how that happens.
I don't see it either. I mean, I think he has to be fired before the trade deadline. I don't think he should be allowed to shape the roster in any way. So, it's going to be if he's not fired at that point, I feel like they got to do sort of what they did with Dell Dempson and bring in another person. Like Danny, they had Danny Ferry come in to sort of navigate that trade deadline and that situation. But I just feel like if they're happy with Trajan, if they like everybody else in the front office, they have to fire Griff before the trade deadline and let those guys shape the team for the future going forward. And look, maybe that will be a renewed thing that will put some confidence in Zion and want him to stay long term. Because I mean, think about it. We've all been in jobs and situations where you've had either the owner of the company or a manager that is just like all the air is sucked out of the room when he walks into the room. And it just makes it like there could be a ton of camaraderie amongst everybody else on the team. And then when that guy comes in, it's just such a drain on everybody. And I just feel like that's the person that David Griffin is. And I've been in the room with him many times. And Chris and I, when Dell Demps got fired, Chris and I wrote an article together where we were going through GM candidates. And he posed David Griffin, which, I mean, there was talk about David Griffin coming here, and I was like, I'm not writing about him. I'm not into him at all. You can have him. I've always been out on him. And then my top guy was Trajan. That's who I wanted. So like when we got Griffin and he hired Trajan, I was like, okay, this could possibly work. I mean, and people that I trust and like David Griffin, so maybe I'm wrong about him. And if Trajan's really making a lot of the personnel decisions, I'll be happy with that. But I just think it's been a total disaster. And then the first time I guess it was really the second time I was in the room with him. Because I was at draft night at Airline Drive when we drafted Zion. So that was the first time I was in the same room with David Griffin. And then I still wasn't that into him. I just felt like he's a used car salesman. But then at Summer League in Vegas, we were out there and they were finally able to announce Jackson Hayes and Nikhil and Didi as members of the team. The trade had finally gone through, and that whole situation. And he came and talked to us, and talking to him one-on-one. He's just got a vibe that is just unlikable and like untrustworthy. And, I've been a lot of things in my life career-wise. Like I stay in one career for about 7 years and I move on. I'm probably older than people think I am. But so I've been a teacher and I've been a bartender. And I feel like those two jobs, like you get really good at reading people. And like I've read him and I just find him just completely untrustworthy and just like a phony. Like he's sort of like riding the coattails of other people's success and building his resume based off of things that other people have done. And then he also wants to be the most important person in the room. I mean, think about around the league. Do you know any other president of basketball operations, what they look like? You see any of them doing commercials on TV or doing the wear your mask promo? No. But for us, he's runs to the camera. He wants to be seen. He wants to be that person. And I just feel like, he didn't like LeBron James coming back to Cleveland because he knew that he wasn't going to be able to control how everything went.
Yep.
But now he's in a situation where he's created it by the way he started his relationship with Zion, where Zion has too much say in things in terms of his own training and his own approach to working out and all of these things. And now he's being controlled by a guy who can't stay on the floor and who also has no tie to the city because he wasn't born there. So I'm sure he's hating life right now too, as he tries to navigate that situation. But I just feel like the sooner that we get him out of the building, the sooner this team can sort of like heal and grow and move forward. So hopefully, the fire is very hot, and like Shamit said in that spaces that you mentioned, Gail Benson doesn't want to be seen as a laughing stock. The Saints were a laughing stock forever. I'm from here, so I know. And now I feel like the Griffin era is a lot like the Mike Ditka era of the Saints, and it's just we are a joke. We lose in the most ridiculous ways. We make ridiculous decisions. Our star, even going back to how our star can't stay healthy. We have good pieces, but it just doesn't work together because it's so mismanaged from the top. And the person who's in charge it wants to be the face of the franchise and not have the players be the face of the franchise. And it just feels very similar to that. And, right after that, we made the move, and that's kind of when the Saints got Jim Haslett and Aaron Brooks. After that, we won our first playoff game, all of that. And of course, the real success came when Drew Brees came, but it was a stepping stone in the right direction. And I think, it could be similar here because we have pieces and we have smart people in place that I really like in the front office and on the coaching staff. It's just when you just have that negative energy at the top, the main guy, it's just hard to work around it.
Really difficult to overcome that stuff. And not only does he want to be the face of the franchise, he wants to be the smartest guy in the room too, which is really frustrating. And maybe he's smart enough to follow along what John says here. He says he thinks that Griffs will resign before he gets fired. I don't know, man. Maybe he will. Hopefully.
The only reason I could see that being true is because his ego is so big that he doesn't want to be seen as a guy that got fired. He'll find a way to resign, whether it's, a fake health thing or whatever it is, I could see that, but it'll be painted in a way it's not a defeat for him, even though it really is.
Oh yeah. And I'm assuming I'm along with you that I'd be pro promoting Trajan Langdon. I don't know what other direction they go. That'd be something that I have to sit down and really look at. But maybe James Jones decides he wants to leave the Suns after this whole Robert Sarver thing. But who knows? And why would James Jones want to come to New Orleans? That's the question.
Yeah, I think more than likely anything that would happen in Phoenix would be that Sarver would be forced to sell the team or just sell the team on his own, so they would move on past that. Why would you leave the situation that you're in over there? You were in the NBA Finals the year before, and you just won 13 games in a row.
Right.
You have, a really solid roster. You have a coach that's grown into being a good coach and is ready to lead a championship team now. He wasn't before. A lot of people say that it was a mistake to fire to fire Monty Williams here, but I think that's a lot of hindsight, painting a brighter picture than it was. Even Monty Williams has said he made a ton of mistakes here, which he did. He wouldn't play guys because they weren't religious. He wouldn't play guys, he made a lot of mistakes. And I think being fired and then going to other situations, he learned how to become a better coach, and he is now. But you could say the way he got fired was bad because they said it was playoff or bust, and he got into the playoffs, and then they still fired him.
Right.
But I did think he was a good coach at that point. He was a great out of timeout coach. The problem was he never knew when to call a timeout. His rotations were really bad. There was a lot of issues with him, and in a lot of stuff where he would play guys that he liked, he liked personally over guys that were better, talent-wise. And that was very frustrating as a fan. But, he seemed to have overcome that, thankfully.
So, Kevin, as we start to wrap up here, as much of a positive note that we can end on. Is there anything that you're watching now as a fan, as a guy who covers the team, that fans can look at and say, hey, there's something I can watch during games. That's something I can look for, even if, the score isn't what we would hope it would be?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, it's kind of the same we've been saying. Valanciunas and Herbert Jones are like the two bright spots to watch. Hopefully Ingram gets over whatever he's going through and comes back to being somewhat of the player that he was a couple years ago. Hopefully one of those young guards. I mean, I think when Devontae comes back, it'll help because you won't have to play Satoransky and Temple as much. You'll have another guy that can hit shots, another guy that can make other people's jobs a little bit easier. But hopefully one of those younger guards like Nikhil or Kyra steps up. Kyra's been playing pretty well. Hopefully that continues, and hopefully he grows a little bit more. And then hopefully Nikhil can find the right role for himself. I compared him to Tyreek earlier, but I mean, in a sense, he's a little bit like Drew Holiday too, in that he has trouble adjusting to new roles and new situations. We've seen that a lot with Drew Holiday, where his role got changed a lot from being on the ball to off the ball to being the primary ball handler, then to having to work off of two bigs like Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins. Every time there was some sort of change, Drew's game took a huge step back, and then he finally figured it out and then started to play like the Drew that we knew at his peak. So I'm hopefully just Nikhil's going through that, just kind of being shuffled around and moved around from starting to bench to being primary ball handler to being off the ball to, having inconsistent guys around him. Hopefully some consistency comes in and he finds, some comfort in his game and his role, because that would be huge. I mean, that would be fun to at least watch, having a young guy that can finish with both hands, pass with both hands, and get to the basket. That's my favorite thing in basketball, is watching layups, like guys create layups for themselves. So I hope I get to see that out of Nikhil soon.
There you go. One thing to watch for Pels fans. For me, it's got to be Kyra. I want to see him continue to develop in different intricacies of the game. And because we want to wrap up here, I won't get too much into that. Maybe that's a podcast episode coming up here. I'll continue to watch Kyra closely. For now, go follow Kevin on Twitter. It's at Kevin B for Bounce. Kevin, are you working on anything with the bird rights? Or do you guys have a Bird Calls podcast coming up or anything like that?
I think we probably will do a Bird Calls podcast pretty soon. I think we're looking at maybe after or before the Jazz doubleheader, trying to get one in then. But as far as writing goes, I haven't written in a long time, except for roundtables. I just don't have the time I write long pieces, and I just don't have the time or energy or really enthusiasm right now with the state of things. And I've been focusing more on art, like I do illustrations. So that's kind of been my creative outlet for the most part. But we'll probably have a podcast pretty soon, I would think.
There you go. Check that out. Yours truly used to be on those, not anymore. But they do great stuff over there at the Bird Calls. And can people purchase your art?
Yeah, of course. So I'm kind of bad in the sense that I'm not consistent in cranking out a bunch of work. So I don't have a bunch of backload of work stuff, but I do have prints and things. And I have some collaborations I do with my friend, Kevin Camarda, that we sell. But I also take commissions. So I've been doing a lot of commission work lately. I'm working on one right now. I'll get back on it as soon as we wrap up. But yeah.
Wait, is there a link people can follow to
I mean, I guess the best way, I'm a terrible businessman. Okay. So I think the best way to see my stuff is my Instagram page, which is the same as my Twitter handle, Kevin B for Bounce. So
Got it. Hit him up for his stuff. Kevin does awesome stuff. I really enjoy what he does. And for frame of reference, you can look at his Twitter profile picture. That's his, and he posts stuff on Twitter as well. Make sure to go check that out. Now, before you go, I want to say once again, thanks to Kevin, but also make sure that you go follow us wherever you're listening to the podcast or subscribe. This episode also brought to you by Hornitos. Hornitos, the official tequila of Pelicans Plus and Boot Crew Media. Leave that rate and review on Apple Podcasts if you're listening there. And before we go, make sure you download that DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PLUS, that's PLUS. Bet just $5 on any NBA team, probably not the Pelicans, to win their game and win $200 in free bets. If they win, you win with promo code PLUS this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an authorized sports betting partner of the NBA. If you're in Louisiana, you can still download the app and play for prizes. Must be 21 or older in New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling a problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Once again, thanks so much, Kevin, for hopping on, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And folks, I am Elliot Clough at Elliot Clough on Twitter, and this was Pelicans Plus.